Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black
own media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Today is Thursday, September 14, 2023. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network, live from the House of Hope in Chicago, where we are getting ready for the McDonald's Inspiration Gospel Tour, kicking off tomorrow night right here in Chicago. We have more details for you about that later in today's show. In Georgia, the family of a 62-year-old black man who was tased by cops finally get to see the video. They are shocked by this. We'll be joined by the family attorney as well as the family right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered to talk about this disturbing case. Also, Vice President Kamala Harris kicks off her 7-campus tour, the Fight for Our Freedoms tour. Her first stop is at Hampton University. We'll show you what took place today in Hampton, where she got a raucous response from the students there. The child poverty rate has gone up. You can blame Republicans and Democratic Senator Joe Manchin for that after they'd gone down to a historic low. We have a conversation about that as well. Also, why did the black head football coach at Colorado State take a shot at Deion Sanders, talking about wearing a hat and shades when talking to grown people? Oh, wait until we show you what he said, and then wait until we show you how Deion responded. Oh, y'all know it's going to be a blowout when they play on Saturday. Folks, it is time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Folks, today in Atlanta, the family of a 62-year-old black man who was tased and died as a result, they got to see that video, and they are not happy at all, and they say the officer involved must be arrested. Johnny Hollman Sr., he was involved in a minor traffic accident, folks. Now, it's not clear why things escalated. Now, remember, we discussed this before. Johnny was the one who called the cops. When the family arrived at the scene, they saw their father lying motionless on the ground with paramedics performing CPR after he was tased by a police officer. The unnamed officer is on leave as the Georgia Bureau of Investigation looks into this case. Bodycam footage has not been released publicly, but the family, they have now been able to see the video. Family attorney Mawali Mel Davis and Johnny Hollman's daughter, Arnitra Hollman, join me right now from Atlanta. Glad to have both of you, unfortunately, under these circumstances. Sorry Arditra, for the loss of your father. Mawali, what does the body cam video show? How long is the video? And because y'all got an opportunity to actually see it today, correct? You're mute. Not sure why you're mute. Make sure you're not. Make sure your button is not. Yeah.
We saw a 5-minute segment.
Now we got you. Go ahead.
I appreciate it, Roland. We saw a 5-minute segment of it. That was it. But that 5 minutes was very telling. What we were confused about was what would be the basis to use force to tase someone after he waited for over an hour in a traffic accident. And what we found was that this officer was demanding that Mr. Hollman sign a ticket. And so Deacon Hollman was saying he wasn't responsible. He asked this young officer, 23 years old, if he could bring a sergeant out. The officer was so irate by this request. He says, you're going to sign this ticket. I don't care if you call your priest or your wife, but you're going to sign this ticket. And so as Mr. Hollman is saying, I'll sign the ticket, the officer grabs his arm, does a leg sweep, and takes him to the ground. And then he begins to push his face into the asphalt, and then he begins to tase him. So what we are very clear about, that this violence, this police violence used against Deacon Hollman was absolutely without any basis, none whatsoever. He was not fighting him. He did not have a weapon. There was no reason for this to happen. And in that video, the deacon literally says, I can't breathe, nearly between 13 and 16 times. He was calling out for help. It was deeply disturbing, and it was hard for the family to view.
Okay. First of all, I know in some states you are required to sign tickets. In some other states you don't have to. What does Georgia law say? Are you required to sign a ticket?
You are, but there are two prongs to the signing of the ticket. The first thing the officer has to do is to tell you that by signing the ticket, this is not an admission of guilt. And the second is that if you don't sign the ticket, they will have to take you in front of a judge and that you can be arrested. The officer failed on the second prong. He did not do that. And this is strictly followed. In fact, there are cases that have been decided here in Georgia that says if you don't do both prongs, then any evidence, the arrest is unlawful. And that was the status that Mr. Hollman was in. Additionally, he never refused. He hesitated and he asked for a sergeant. But when the officer became more aggressive, he said, I'll sign the ticket. He repeated it 3 times. And the officer ignored his willingness to sign the ticket and decides that he's going to take him down and then begin to physically assault him and tase him.
Arditra, obviously it had to be difficult to see this video because when y'all arrived, your father was motionless. I mean, so these literally are the last images of him being alive.
Yes, very emotional. Remember when he was calling me. So he dialed my number to let me know what was going on, but he never actually got a chance to physically, speak with me. He had me on speakerphone. He called out for me twice. He said, baby. And then after that, I could just hear the officer being very aggressive with my father. I could hear my father, asking him, why you doing an old man like me like this? And, I could just hear the officer still being aggressive, cursing at my father, using profanity. He was going back and forth with him. My father was telling him I did nothing wrong, and he was just trying to plead with him. And this officer was still aggressive. So for those 17 minutes and 46 seconds that I stayed on the phone, it was very disturbing to now watch this video because it only confirmed what I already knew. So when I initially got on the scene, those were my first words. You killed my father. Y'all killed my daddy. I knew. the way they was beating his chest, trying to revive him. But once I didn't hear my daddy speak anymore after he was asking for help, after he was telling them he could not breathe, I felt it in my spirit. My daddy was gone already.
Well, Willie, the thing that, again, it's a ticket.
Right.
So
exactly.
all the cop has to do is, as you said, read that stuff off. Here you go. And you say the video shows him saying, okay, I'll go ahead and sign the ticket.
3 times he says it. And Roland, here's what is so sinister about the way the city has moved on this. While we are in there watching the video, they released a statement that says they now have a new policy, which an officer will not arrest anyone for refusing to sign a ticket. Instead, they will just write refuse to sign ticket on the ticket and then allow them to go about their way. And they don't tell us that they're going to release this new policy. They just do it while we're inside, anticipating that when we come out, and the family literally, Arnitra fell to the floor when she saw that they killed her father over his hesitancy to sign a ticket. It just was, this is one of the worst that we have seen. And our firm has been handling cases in Georgia for 15 years. We haven't seen anything like this before because it's so illogical. He didn't have a weapon, nothing. It's just, he was asking questions, and the officer, and the way he talked to him, it was just so outside of what you would expect from a young Black man to speak to an elder. He told him, lower your voice. Why are you yelling? I mean, just talk.
So you're saying the officer involved here was a young African American?
Yes, Officer Kimbrough, young African American who, again, I shared with some organizers earlier. This was totally outside the context of our culture as a people for a 23-year-old to talk to a 62-year-old in that way. The only place that you can do that is within police culture, right? And so this is the alien culture that Black, white, Latino officers adopt, a culture that says whatever or however you were raised, you can let that go. You don't have to respect anyone because you got a badge and a gun. And that is what's so troubling about the way this whole thing was handled. And so the family has been asking for this entire video to be released to the public. The world should see what happened to Deacon Hollman. They should see it.
Beyond sad. Mawuli, Arnitra, we certainly appreciate both of you joining us. Last question. Have the police indicated when they plan to release this body cam footage publicly?
No, that's why we need your viewers, the listeners, to make the demand. This is about transparency and accountability. We are living in a world now where there's no reason to hold this kind of information. They released it in Tyree Nichols. They've released it in George Floyd. They've released it in all of these other cases. And Atlanta sits as the center of the civil rights movement. We have to do better. We have to lead in a way through our actions and not just our words.
Indeed. All right. We certainly appreciate you, both of us, being with us. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. We appreciate you, Roland.
Folks, we're going to talk about this on the flip side with our panel. When we come back from this break, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to hit the like button. Also, we want those of you to support us in what we do by joining our Bring the Funk fan club. Your dollars are critically important for us to be able to do what we do. Send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal are Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Be sure to download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Don't forget you can watch us 24-hour, 7-day-a-week streaming channel on Amazon News. All you do is go to Amazon Fire, click Amazon News, and then you can also tell Alexa, if you have it, Alexa, play news from the Black Star Network. And we're also available on Plex TV. And so you pull up Plex TV, go to, again, search for Black Star Network, or you go to Live TV, click News and Opinion. You'll find us there as well. Finally, don't forget to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, available at bookstores nationwide. Order it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Get it at Target, Books A Million. Download the audio version on Audible. We'll be right back.
On his first day in office, with the country in crisis, President Biden got to work for us. Cutting Black child poverty in half, more money for Black entrepreneurs, millions of new, good-paying jobs. He's lowered the cost of living and prescription drugs. But there's more to do. He gets it, because we all deserve dignity, safety, respect, and a chance to do more than just get by, but to get ahead.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Next on The Frequency with me, Dee Barnes. Producer, writer, and activist Drew Dixon joins us for an honest conversation about Black women and trauma, right here on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Hello, I'm Paula J. Parker. Truly proud on the Proud Family.
I am Tommy Davidson. I play Oscar on Proud Family, Louder and Proud.
Hi, I'm Jo Marie Payton, voice of Sugar Mama on Disney's Louder and Prouder Disney Plus. And I'm with Roland Martin on Unfiltered.
Roland Martin Unfiltered here on the Black Star Network. My panel, Dr. Greg Card, Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University, joining us out of D.C. Reese Colbert, host of the Reese Colbert Show on Sirius XM Radio out of D.C. as well. Lauren Victoria Burke, Black Press USA out of Arlington, Virginia. Again and again and again and again and again and again, Reese, black man ends up dead due to a traffic stop, a basic traffic stop. It doesn't matter if the cop is black, doesn't matter if the cop is white, it doesn't matter. These things continue. And this is a case where Hollman gets in a car accident. He calls the cops. And now, based upon what we heard from the attorney and his daughter, the arrogant cop gets mad and you gonna sign this ticket? You talking to an old black man, bruh. I don't care if you're talking to a young black man. If somebody's ranting and screaming, this all the cop has to say. Are you done?
Right.
When you're done, simply sign this ticket and you can go on about your day and you get in the car. But no, what these cops do is they do not de-escalate. They choose to escalate because what they know is they have a gun and a badge and a taser, and they can act with impunity.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a lynching. That's what it is. You know, when you sit up there and you get involved in a minor traffic accident, it wasn't like this man was in a high-speed chase going through multiple cities and had 100 cops on his tail. Like, it was a minor traffic accident, and it escalated to the point of being murdered by this police officer. And, you know, just the fact that it's a Black person just makes it that much more heinous. I know some people seem to think that we only care when a white person kills a Black person or a white cop kills a Black person, but if you're a Black cop out there killing people, your ass need to go to jail too. Ain't nobody having no sympathy for you or no kind of, you know, leeway for you. But it's really just disgusting. And I know that the city of Atlanta changed their practices so that the officer just has to refuse to sign afterwards. But why do you have to anticipate every single possible way that these cops can turn a simple interaction into a murderous situation by policy? Because these people are out here acting with impunity and they're bored and they feel like, I don't have shit to do, better to do right now. I'm not solving crime. I'm not solving carjackings. I'm not solving anything that's actually going wrong in society. I'm just gonna mess with this, you know, this deacon of a church. And so I'm appalled by what happened. I was trying to see what kind of disciplinary action was taken against him. But I do agree with your guest who said that Atlanta really is at the forefront of the civil rights movement when you're talking about criminal justice because of what's happening with people being, you know, dying in prisons, getting killed in prisons, and with the police down there. Something absolutely needs to be done about the Atlanta PD.
You know, Lauren, I guess what angers me, what drives me crazy is that we've done so many of these stories. I mean, so many of these stories. And it's sort of, it's when I think about this, I think about when I see a story of a young brother, dudes bump into each other, and words escalate, somebody gets shot and killed. And you sit here and you go, innocent life taken, and it makes no sense. In fact, you know, I'm here in Chicago, and I remember there was a major basketball player here in Chicago. Name is Ben Wilson. And the thing that's crazy, I saw a 30 for 30 documentary, and different stories that are told. This kid literally was LeBron James before LeBron James. We should be talking about him as a Hall of Famer right now. Altercation takes place. Some say words were exchanged. Others say it was demand for his wallet. Bottom line, brother shot and killed. When I see these stories, so-and-so stepped on my shoe. Ends up somebody being viciously beaten, somebody being murdered. You go, really stepping on your shoe? Yet we see these stories. And I remember when the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March, and they were lining up, the Fruit of Islam was lining up for Minister Farrakhan to come in. And I had a member of the Fruit of Islam who got my face, told us we need to cross this wall, and got like literally at my face and said, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to break you in half. Mm-hmm. This is literally how I responded. Now, I could have started yelling, cussing. I could have. But what the brother didn't realize is, dude, I'm actually helping you out right now. Because if I call Mustafa Farrakhan, or call Minister Farrakhan, you're going to have a problem. Now, how I handle it was how I was supposed to handle it. I'm not about to sit here and get into no argument and no yelling. Because first of all, dude, you're wrong. And the minister will tell you in a heartbeat you're wrong. But again, I de-escalated. I could have responded with all of that energy. Right. I ain't wasting my time. And this is what I'm trying to also, when I tell young brothers, don't respond to nonsense with heightened energy, because then all you're going to do is tick somebody else, and now this thing goes. That's the problem I have with so many of these cops. They refuse to de-escalate. They refuse to bring it down. They refuse to sit here and say, and go quiet and say, sir, let me know when you're done. What do you mean when I'm done? Let me know when you're done being emotional. Then I'm going to calmly explain to you what you have to do for this ticket, then you can go on about your day. That's all the cop has to do. But they know they don't have to do that because the law protects them.
Well, yes, Roland, you're right. In this situation, though, I think one of the key facts here is a 23-year-old cop. And I'm telling you right now, as somebody who's been stopped, I do a lot of driving. I really enjoy driving. And even though I grew up in New York, the other half of my family's in Virginia, so I've had to spend a lot of my life going up and down 95. I've been stopped in Nebraska. I've been stopped in Virginia several times. I've been stopped in Washington, D.C. The last time I got stopped, actually, was in Arlington, Virginia. Young cop. There's nothing that makes me more nervous when I get stopped than to look into my rearview mirror and see a young cop. The last time I was stopped, same exact situation. I had to sign the ticket. I did a slow roll through a stop sign I was actually on my way to William T. Newman's retirement ceremony, the husband of Sheila Johnson, and in Arlington. And cop was perfectly polite. Everything was great. I did have to sign the ticket. He did say signing the thing was not an admission of guilt. But to your point, I do think that there's a problem in this country with regard to the qualifications for police officers. This is somebody who can take away your liberty, take away your life, take away your freedom in an instant. And during the break, I texted my boyfriend, who's a federal police officer. This is for federal police. You can be 21 years old and be a federal police officer. Starting salary is $77,000. That scares me. I thought it was a little higher than that. I have seen jurisdictions where the requirement for police was 2 years of college required or 2 years of military required. There probably should be an age requirement because people who are young, who have very limited life experience, do not do what you just said, Roland, which is think about what you're doing, think about the scope of the inaneness and sort of the routineness of writing a ticket. Most of these cops do have to go through some field training, FTO training, which is basically you're paired with a senior cop for a period of time. But this is stupidity. A 23-year-old cop, that right there is the answer to this happening. And we cannot get into this cycle, in my view, when we see tapes like the Eric Garner situation or George Floyd or know stories like Breonna Taylor. We cannot get used to this. This idea that people should just be dying on routine traffic stops. He called the police for an accident, which is a non-confrontational problem. And somebody ends up dead because a 23-year-old cop decides to escalate instead of de-escalating. So the age of the cop, I think, is a huge factor here. But also, to Reese's point, we've got enough law enforcement in this country. When people are getting stopped for these trivial matters and these jurisdictions are making money off of it, after what we saw with Jennings, with the Ferguson thing, with Michael Brown being shot for absolutely no reason, there's something going on with, I think, having a few too many cops around. Because this is the type of trivial type of thing that should have never led to any of this. So there it is.
I was, Greg, I was talking to comedian Gary Owen, and he was an MP when he was in the military. And when I had my TV One show, and I think we were discussing, I think we probably had one of these stories where somebody had been shot and killed by cops. And Gary was on for something else, but he wanted to comment. And I remember him saying, he's like, I was an MP. He said, and I can tell you, he said, I dealt with drunk colonels, generals, privates. And he said, I probably de-escalated far more situations when I could have easily escalated. And that's what we're talking about here. If we roll through all of these previous examples of story after story, somebody being pulled over for a light, a license plate, a tag hanging from, in nearly all of those cases, It's a cop just, you know, raw, all the bravado, as opposed to bringing it down and calming people. Even, I remember the Sandra Bland case. That cop knew at the moment, he knew how to agitate her. And remember when she was just, he goes, "Are you finished?" And then ordered her to put out her cigarette. And he knew she was agitated. And he knew she was going to say no. And it was no basis for him to say, "Put the cigarette out." But he knew at the moment he gave a lawful command for her to get out of the car, she had to comply, even if she knew it was wrong. And that's why she got arrested. And that's what too many of these cops do. This is the kind of crap they pull. And you should have police chiefs who say, "That's not the kind of person I want on my police force. You're gone."
Absolutely, Roland. Well, and therein lies part of the problem. And of course, his authorization there in Texas was his shriveled manhood. These are human beings who are unfit for any office or any job that would have them with some form of unequal power relationship with other human beings. But that's why they apply for the job. These types, after all. You know, today, tomorrow will mark the 60th anniversary of the murder of Addie Mae Collins and Cynthia Wesley and Denise McNair and Carol Robeson in 16th Street Baptist Church. And today in class, I showed the students the story of the two young boys that were killed that day in Birmingham. Virgil Ware, who was shot by some punk white supremacists who were actually out celebrating the deaths at 16th Street Baptist Church. They were out celebrating, and they shot this little boy while he and his brother were delivering the Sunday newspaper, and he died in his brother's arms. But the one I want to focus on momentarily is 16-year-old Johnny Robinson, who was shot in the back by a punk-ass cop in Birmingham. Nobody ever went to jail for the murders of Ware and Robinson. But I bring that up because that was 1963 in Birmingham with a full-blooded racist police force. Atlanta, like Memphis, in contrast, is now run by black people. And Atlanta is probably the biggest and best case study in the United States of America on the triumphs and the limits of the civil rights movement. Just because you are black doesn't mean that you will do justice. And as Miley Davis, one of our best attorneys, a brother who I've known for a very long time, who's always out there freedom fighting, said today, this is a culture of impunity. Once you don that blue uniform, you're no longer black. You're part of the blue gang, the blue clan. In the case of Karan Kimbrough, the 23-year-old cop, a graduate of Alabama Agricultural and Mechanical University, by the way, so he has a college degree. In the case of Karan Kimbrough, his huskiness was born with the cop courage of his badge and his uniform. He not only needs to be punished, the Atlanta Police Department, again, black people, issuing a press release saying that this brother resisted arrest, and then very quickly, with the shriveled courage of their funky mechanism, their funky administrative mechanism, certainly in collusion with whatever lawmakers and policymakers are in the city of Atlanta at this time, decided to change the policy. And of course, I'm sure that Mallory's going to have a field day with that as almost like an admission of guilt. Now you can just sign for the ticket. Well, let's tell you something, you retrobates. Let's tell you something, you people who think that you can hide behind your skin color in a city that shows you the limits of civil rights movements. Once you have donned the office of police, you have become an open enemy of our people. Again, I echo the words of Jay Dilla in F the Police. We could lose a few of them. We have enough of them. We have to understand that this is not going to end until we end it. And it's not going to be about electing black people to office. It's going to be about putting black policymakers in place who look beyond skin color to see the truth and justice. The police cannot be reformed. They must be dismantled and remade.
Folks, hold tight. 1 second. Got to come back. We'll talk about Alabama, how white Republicans there continue to deny black folks voters. And they are hoping and praying that one hardcore right-wing Supreme Court justice going to allow their case to go back before the Supreme Court. Elie Mystal joins us next to tell us exactly who that is and how black folks, we have not won. We've won a bunch of battles, but have not won the war when it comes to redistricting and the cheating out of power of black power. We'll discuss that next right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, are you working hard and yet your performance doesn't reflect your paycheck? On the next Get Wealthy, you're going to learn some savvy career moves so that all your efforts actually show up in your bank account. Joining us is the founder of a career network, and she's going to share the 3 R's of accelerating your financial growth.
Here's a tip as well. If you are an individual contributor and you desire to be a leader, do the work where you are now. Because if you do the work where you are now, when you do reach the level, you'll be prepared to stay there.
Right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
President Biden has delivered for Black America. More funding for Black entrepreneurs. Millions of new good-paying jobs. He's lowering the cost of medications and the cost of living. Joe Biden is delivering for us, and that's the facts.
All change is not growth.
Right.
But thoughtful change is real good fertilizer. And that's what has been so beneficial to us.
But you also were not afraid of the pivot.
Well, and I'm a Black woman in business. Come on, I don't care how I dress up. I don't care who I'm speaking with. I don't care what part of the world I am in. I still am a Black woman in business. Being afraid of the pivot, being fearful of change is not what got me here. Respectful of change, respectful of pivot, yeah. Fearful, no, no.
Hey, what's up? It's Sammy Roman.
Hey, it's John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show.
It's me, Sherry Shepherd, and you know what you're watching, Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network. Oh, white Republicans in red states right now are scared to death that the Supreme Court may not let them keep screwing over Black voters. Alabama has been now denied several times by a 3-judge panel there in the Northern District, and now they are trying to appeal to the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court does not hear their appeal, then they're going to have to abide by a special master to redraw the lines. The special master has until September 25th to redraw these lines. So what could happen here? Well, Elie Mystal of The Nation wrote a piece where he said the person who they are hoping and banking on is Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Elie Jones is right now. Elie, glad to have you back on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Unpack why you lay out that Brett Kavanaugh is their secret weapon. They are just hoping he's the guy who goes, yes, let's let them come back and re-argue this case. Elie, I think, Elie, you're on mute. Elie, you're on mute. Elie has muted himself.
That was a kid-level situation. Sorry. Anyway,
there you go.
To understand how Brett Kavanaugh plays a role here, we have to back up for a second and remember how we got here in the first place. Alabama issued racist maps after the 2020 census. Alabama has 7 congressional districts. Alabama is 26% Black. 2 divided by 7 equals 28%. There should be 2 majority minority districts in Alabama. Alabama produced maps that only resulted in 1. All right, so they were sued by the NAACP and others. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. In a surprising 5-4 decision, John Roberts and Brett Kavanaugh joined the liberals in saying that the Alabama maps were an unconstitutional racial gerrymander and they had to redraw the maps. So Alabama takes that decision and is like, yeah, screw you. We're not gonna do what you say. Instead of redrawing the maps to make 2 majority minority districts, they take 1 district that was 30% Black, they make it 40% Black. You're still not going to elect a Black congressperson in that district, and sends it back and says we're done. They're sued again, as you pointed out, a 217-page scathing decision from a unanimous 3-judge panel ruled that Alabama was again in violation of the Constitution and the Supreme Court and appointed the special master to redraw their maps. But they're appealing to the Supreme Court again. And this time they're using an argument specifically asked for by Brett Kavanaugh. Because when Kavanaugh joined Roberts and the liberals in the Alabama case the first time, he explicitly said, hey, maybe the Voting Rights Act has outlived its usefulness. The exact quote from the decision is, the Voting Rights Act cannot be extended indefinitely into the future. But, Kavanaugh said, nobody in this case made that argument, so what can I do? I don't know. Well, obviously, Alabama took that as an invitation to come back to the Supreme Court over the Supreme Court's order and make specifically the argument that Brett Kavanaugh asked for, and that's what they're doing now. In addition to redrawing their maps so that they are still racist, Alabama is now arguing that the reason why they're allowed to be racist is that the Voting Rights Act has outlived its usefulness and should not be, quote, extended indefinitely into the future. And so it is that argument that Brett Kavanaugh himself asked for that Alabama is now back at the Supreme Court making. And if Kavanaugh flips his votes, like I said, initially it was 5-4. I'm actually not worried about Roberts on this particular case. Not because I trust Roberts, but John Roberts doesn't like it when states defy his orders, right? He gets a little like tight in his britches when that happens. So I'm not worried about Roberts changing his vote. But Kavanaugh, if he changes his vote, then we go 5-4 the other way. And then not only is Alabama allowed to racistly redraw its maps, but we're also staring at a situation where Kavanaugh and the other 4 conservatives who are always against it could rule that the Voting Rights Act is too old to be of use anymore because, according to the white conservatives, we have defeated racism.
And then that becomes a trickle-down effect because it then goes from Alabama to the Louisiana case, to the Florida case, to the cases happening right now in Georgia. And to your point there, and this is what the Supreme Court justices, these right-wingers do. They literally, to your point, he brings it up, they literally give direction to these folks as a way to go, yeah, do this and bring it back to me.
Oh yeah, this is transactional of the nth degree, right? This is a drug dealer saying, like, I don't know nothing about no pandemic, but if you want some, maybe you should go to the van down in the alley, right? That's how subtle this is, which is to say, it ain't subtle at all what Kavanaugh is doing. He's shopping for cases. He's shopping for specific legal arguments. And as you say, I thought in real time in June when Kavanaugh wrote this opinion, I was like, the next thing that's going to happen is that Louisiana or Texas or Florida makes this argument to Kavanaugh to redraw its maps. I just thought that was going to happen after the next census, right? I didn't think that Alabama would come back immediately in defiance of the Supreme Court order. But this is what Brett Kavanaugh asked for, and Alabama is handing it to him on a plate. The only hope here is that Kavanaugh is kind of embarrassed by himself. And, you know, based on his history, I don't know that man is capable of feeling shame. But if he is, this stinks to high heaven. It stinks to have a case where the plaintiffs just lost in front of your court to come back with the same case with this, you know, random argument that you made, pining for a different case in the future. So that's the hope here. But yeah, as you say, it's going to trickle down. If Kavanaugh flips his vote, it's going to trickle down throughout the old Confederacy because the southern states have never really accepted the idea that they lost the Civil War. And for some of your listeners who, because I know I'll speak for me, as a Northeastern elitist liberal, I speak to a lot of Black people in my socioeconomic, social circle who don't always understand that most Black people still live in the states where our ancestors were enslaved. The blackest state in the country is Mississippi. Alabama is the 5th blackest state in the country based on population. We still live in the South. And the South, the reason why the South remains ruby red, as opposed to having the influence of those, large percentages of black and brown voters, is because of this kind of racial gerrymandering, right? There are 2 reasons. One, white people in the South stick together. Like they're hanging on for dear life. And 2, when they stick together and they take control of state legislatures, they gerrymander away the political power of their black citizens that are still living there.
And the thing that really just, I think, jumps out at me when you see what's at play here, and that is Leonard Leo and the Republicans. And I keep trying to explain to people, these people are playing for keeps. They know and understand the power of judges. And normally you talked about Roberts, but normally no federal judge and normally no other federal judges like it when somebody defies a decision that went through the appeals court, that went all the way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court kicks it back down, and Alabama still goes, the hell with that. We don't care. We're going to sit here and try to get a second bite at the apple. And so I would hope a Brett Kavanaugh and these other justices would go, no. Y'all not going to sit here and then just defy a federal court. But they don't care about that, Elie. They care about power. And they understand power. They understand playing for keeps. And that is what people need to understand what the right is all about.
The Supreme Court, the courts in general, and the Supreme Court especially, is a political institution that makes decisions based on their preferred political outcomes. So when you hear people say, some people like the President of the United States say that they don't want to politicize the Supreme Court, news alert, that done already happened, all right? That horse has left the barn and is galloping away, okay? The Supreme Court is...
First of all, let's be real clear. The person who's elected the president, he's going to pick someone from an ideological standpoint that's likely where he stands. It's rare a Stephen Breyer flips, I think it was Breyer, who was appointed by Republican and then basically became essentially, David Souter, appointed by Republican and became a liberal. So that's rare, it happens. And then the Senate is going to confirm somebody who likely that is along ideological lines. So yeah, I hate that crap when they go, no, we're the Supreme Court. We judge things evenly. Stop it. You're not. Right now, we have a hard right Supreme Court. And let's be clear. If anything happened to Alito and Clarence Thomas and Biden got to pick, the court's going to flip 5-4 to liberals.
Absolutely, right? The Supreme Court is out here picking political outcomes, right? And so the question really becomes, when you're looking at this particular case, is which political outcome does Brett Kavanaugh want? Because as much as he wants Republicans to win elections, when you're Republican and you already control the Supreme Court, you've got a vested interest in making sure that the Supreme Court is viewed as legitimate and their orders are enforced, because that's going to help your political side more than if people understand the Supreme Court should be ignored. Because I promise you, if Alabama gets away with ignoring the Supreme Court here, what happens next is that blue states start ignoring Supreme Court orders when it comes to guns, when it comes to abortion rights, and when it comes to voting rights, right? So if you're a conservative and you already are winning and you already control the Supreme Court, what's actually the smart play? Do you go with Alabama now because you're going to get an extra red state congressman in the 2024 election, which, look, it might matter. This is a very close Congress. 7 seats separate the majority from the minority. 1 seat is a big deal. But are you going to risk it all for the 1 seat? Or are you going to maintain the imprimatur of power that the Supreme Court has so that you can enforce all of the other conservative rulings that your court is likely to do? The smart play would be to deny Alabama's appeal, but we're talking about Brett Kavanaugh, who's not a smart man. And so that is why that is why I have concerns. That's why this all really comes down to where his vote's going to be in terms of hearing this appeal at all or its final decision.
And of course, we know doggone well that we have two Supreme Court justices who are very much bought and paid for, especially one, Uncle Clarence, because all you got to do is throw him, a couple of bottles of beer and a free trip on a plane, and you got his vote.
Oh,
you know how that
the
goes.
graft,
Elie Mystal,
corruption is embarrassing. And again, if the Supreme Court was smart, they would be looking to stamp this out, because this corruption decreases the legitimacy of their own conservative victories. So it's amazing to me that Roberts hasn't done anything to try to stop the graft in his own courthouse.
And they are grifters. Elie Mystal, I appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Folks, going to a break. We'll continue this conversation when we come back right here on Roland Martin on the Black Star Network. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Folks, we are broadcasting live from the House of Hope in Chicago. Tomorrow, right here, McDonald's is kicking off their multiple city gospel tour. It's happening here in Chicago, the House of Hope. You see it right there, of course. You can get free tickets, folks. Free tickets. All you got to do is go to blackandpositivelygolden.com, blackandpositivelygolden.com for the Inspiration Celebration Gospel Tour, the cross-culture experience. We've been here doing various interviews with all of the entertainers involved with this, and so looking forward to sharing those with you. And so, again, if you're in Chicago, we would love to see you. I'm going to broadcast the show from here live tomorrow. We'd love to see y'all come on out and holler at a brother. Folks, don't forget to also, please, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button. And also, join our Bring the Funk fan club. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans, 20,000 of our fans. I would love to have 200,000 of our fans contributing $50 each every single year. Boy, that'll be a huge windfall for what we do. That's about $10 million. Man, that'll really allow us to grow. But the goal is to get 20,000 fans contributing on average $50 each. That's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. A lot of people can't give that. We appreciate all they give, but the people who also give more, that's what we ask on average, $50. So you consider checking money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal are Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And let me shout out Dr. C, Noah Stevens, Lawrence Scott, let's see here, Kareem Brooks, Daryl Johnson, Love Logic, Herman Fluid, Charles Slocum, Sealbon Hatchett, Narice Cox, Debbie Stevens, William McKinnon, Toledo Arilla, Tiffany Tolder, Leonard Franklin Jr., Crystal Handy, Robin Freeman, James W. Davis Jr., Reginald Borders, Ilana Carroll, Stella Burdett, T.O.W., Michael Milliner, Alicia Lindsay, Cheryl Akani, Dre, Diamond, Sup Ahai, Nurse Linda White, Sel, Richard McGregory, as well. So I want to thank all of them for contributing to our Bring the Funk fan club. Folks, I'll see you in a moment after this break. Back in a moment.
Next on The Black Tape with me, Greg Carr. What do Deion Sanders, a lawnmower, and the phenomenon of invisible labor all have in common? They're all now part of, shall we say, a colorful lore at our historically black colleges and universities. Our Master Educator Roundtable convenes to explain it all as we explore the good, the bad, and the downright ugly of one of Black America's national treasures. That's next on The Black Table, right here on the Black Star Network.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, we're going to be talking about common sense. We think that people have it, know how to use it, but it is something that people often have to learn. The truth is, most of us are not born with it, and we need to teach common sense, embrace it, and give it to those who need it most, our kids.
So I always tell teachers to listen out to what conversations the students are having about what they're getting from social media, and then let's get ahead of it and have the appropriate conversations with them.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, here at Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Bruce Smith, creator and executive producer of The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered. Greg, I'll start with you. When we talk about the Supreme Court and what's happening in Alabama, again, these white Republicans, they do not want to see black people empowered. The Republican Party ain't looking out for black people. I don't know if you even think about voting for these evil folks and what they have planned for us. You got to be outside of your mind, and they absolutely do not want to see the Supreme Court say, nope, we've already decided, because they know what then is going to happen with the case in Louisiana, then Florida and Georgia, where we could literally see a pickup of 5 or 7 black seats.
Absolutely right. I mean, and I don't blame them for what they're doing, because they're white supremacists. They realize that the demographics are against them. And they realize that this demographic ticking time bomb is about to explode. There was an article in yesterday's Financial Times detailing how the Electoral College is slowly eroding in terms of the baked-in advantage to white supremacists that the Electoral College poses. In the election of 2024, they get a little closer to the tipping point. So shaving off a few seats in Louisiana or in Alabama could make all the difference in terms of their short-term and long-term plans. But I agree with Elie on this. They're playing a very dangerous game now. You see, what Brett Kavanaugh absolutely, as Elie said, signaled to these white supremacists in Atlanta that he was open to an argument that really isn't an argument. The only thing where I would make diverge from Elie, and if he were here, I think he would probably agree on this. I think he probably would agree he may have chosen the wrong word, is that Kavanaugh made an argument. He did not make an argument. What he said was that basically this race-based solution process that the Voting Rights Act represents has to end sometimes. Now, we all remember the vague allusion to Sandra Day O'Connor in the Grutter case in affirmative action, which was used or gestured toward by saying, well, you know, maybe in the next 25 years, affirmative action can end. But that wasn't used as the rationale for overturning affirmative action. In this case, Brett Kavanaugh, if he were to say, I'm going to side with the white supremacists in Alabama because because the Voting Rights Act has outlived its usefulness, that would destroy even the pretense of any form of process and statutory interpretation. And what he would do is undermine, finally, the legitimacy of the court in a way where it could never be put back. Now, those who study the law understand that this has always been an issue. It was an issue with Roger Taney and Dred Scott. It was an issue in Giles versus Alabama and Oliver Wendell Holmes in the 19th century, in early 20th century. It has been an issue all along. But if Brett Kavanaugh does that, you can toss aside law degrees at that point. What you dropped is all pretense that they're using any process of statutory interpretation, and they're just doing whatever the hell they want. And Elie is absolutely right. Once they break it, then now we're talking about something we've never seen in this country, which is basically ignoring the Supreme Court. And if you want to see somebody ignore the Supreme Court and gesture toward that, look at the Indian Removal Act and Andrew Jackson when he said, I understand you can make a decision, Supreme Court, but do you have an army to back it up? This will be uncharted territory. And I, for one, to say go for it. We'll see what happens after that.
Lauren, I just keep trying to explain to people, understand it. The Republicans, they know the game that they're playing. They know exactly what they're doing. And they're funding this. They see, I laid this thing out my book, White Fear, how the browning of America is making white folks lose their minds. Their whole deal is, if we can lock down the Supreme Court for the next 30 to 50 years, we can sit here and run the table. I mean, bottom line is this here. If Biden and Harris are not reelected, I'm going to tell you right now, Alito and Thomas are both going to retire.
Yeah.
And they're going to appoint a 42 or 45-year-old federal judge to the Supreme Court, and they're going to sit here and say, booyah. And they're going to say, we got Roberts, Gorsuch, Barrett, whoever that person is. We got those. They know what they're doing. And then they're going to sit here and say, let's hope one of these liberals retire. That's their game plan. And so folks need to understand it. And so when I tell black folks, play around if you want to. Sit this election out if you want to. But I'm telling you, when they start having more decisions that go against black folks, I'm going to sit here and say, hashtag, we tried to tell you.
Yeah, when we have these discussions, the only two people I can think about is Hillary Clinton and Robbie Mook. That's it. And the fact that Debbie Dingell and G.K. Butterfield tried to tell their campaign to campaign more in Michigan and North Carolina. And losing that election in 2016, this was the result, these moments, this and the Dobbs decision. I really don't think that any sort of statutory interpretation matters to these people. The only thing that matters is control and having power and being able to control the laws as they want to see it on the conservative side, knowing that they're losing on the demographics and being in control. That's it. And frankly, until the Democratic Party sort of gets to the level where they understand the urgency of the moment and don't think that they can just run an election and act like they know what's going on in places like Michigan and North Carolina as they're running and not listen to the people on the ground, you're going to get this result. And this is the result we've gotten. It doesn't surprise me that, we're in this situation. It wouldn't surprise me that the prophecy that Elie laid out happens, because that sounds exactly like they would do. It sounds exactly like something they would do. And we've already saw that with these decisions that they just handed down. And, of course, the one with regard to Dobbs. So why wouldn't they do this? They go all the way and they have no shame in their game. And it shouldn't surprise anybody at this point.
Reese?
The bottom line is Republicans have said that they're going to do whatever the hell they want to do regardless. They've never played by the rules. They've only used the rules as a cudgel against Democrats who are so tethered to process and to precedent and a number of things. The Republican Party is now saying that the Supreme Court is not legitimate. When you just completely disregard what the Supreme Court is saying and you try to play with fire and you give who gonna check me boo energy, that's already saying that the Supreme Court is not legitimate. I think what they're really at danger is, I think what the Supreme Court ruling in this Alabama case initially was trying to buy a little bit of time, trying to put a little bit of control, thinking that they can have a little bit of control on just the Republican Party now's desire to just go through straight fascism, completely authoritarian government, white nationalist government. And I think if they overturn this or if they allow the Republicans to do that, they're going to let a genie out of a bottle that they cannot put back in. They're going to say that our rule doesn't actually rule anymore. And they're giving open license to Republicans to go even further than they've ever gone. And that's really what's at stake at 2024. They're already pushing their limits all throughout the country. We talk about book bans, we talk about CRT, but they're actually usurping elected officials that are Democratic. Ron DeSantis down there has now removed 2 states' attorney. We've talked about on this show, Roland, many times, where what Abbott is doing in terms of the school boards and the school systems in Democratic-led states, or cities rather, they are going to open up a can of worms to where it's complete chaos and lawlessness. I don't know Black people are as prepared for this as they seem to be, but we've been sitting up here debating about who's dancing in what or who's at what place or whatever little bullshit of the day, what Krishan and Blueface are talking about with their little custody situation. I don't know if we're as equipped to really deal with the Republicans completely unleashed. And that's what scares me more than anything about 2024.
And they will be exactly that. All right, folks, we're going to break. We come back. We're going to talk about the child poverty rate going up. Hello, Republicans. and Senator Joe Manchin, this is all on you. That's next. And we'll talk about the black coach at Colorado State. Wait till I play for y'all what he said about Deion Sanders. And Deion did not waste time responding. But all of that in the second hour of Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
On his first day in office, with the country in crisis, President Biden got to work for us. Cutting black child poverty in half, more money for black entrepreneurs, millions of new, good-paying jobs. He's lowered the cost of living and prescription drugs. But there's more to do. He gets it because we all deserve dignity, safety, respect, and a chance to do more than just get by, but to get ahead.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Next on The Frequency with me, Dee Barnes. Producer, writer, and activist Drew Dixon joins us for an honest conversation about Black women and trauma, right here on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, are you working hard and yet your performance doesn't reflect your paycheck? On the next Get Wealthy, you're going to learn some savvy career moves so that all your efforts actually show up in your bank account. Joining us is the founder of a career network, and she's going to share the 3 R's of accelerating your financial growth.
Here's a tip as well. If you are an individual contributor and you desire to be a leader, do the work where you are now. Because if you do the work where you are now, when you do reach the level, you'll be prepared to stay there.
Right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
Farquhar, executive producer of Proud Family. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Folks, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the poverty rate has increased for the first time in 13 years. The supplemental poverty measure, which looks at government programs and tax credits designed to help low-income families, found in 2022, the poverty rate was 12.4%, up 4.6% from 2021. The poverty rate among children doubled from 5.2% in 2021 to 12.4% last year. Why did the poverty rate grow up? Well, expiration of pandemic programs, stimulus payments, and congressional members who voted against the child tax credit. First of all, let me correct that. My folks wrote that. No, not Congress members who voted against the child tax credit. Republicans and Senator Joe Manchin, who did not support the extension of the child tax credit. Joining me now from D.C. is Lily Roberts, Managing Director of Inclusive Growth for the Center for American Progress. Lily, this is real simple. And I say this all the time. Republicans love talking about how they're pro-life, and they're pro-life. When you vote against a program for child poverty, you're not pro-life. Lily, I think you're on mute. Lily, I think you're on mute.
How about this?
This is supposed to be a thing today. Every guest we've had today has been muted first. All right, Lily, there we go, Lily. We got you.
Oh,
we got you. Go ahead.
Sorry about that.
you know, and it's such a tough situation to see the poverty rate increasing, particularly among children, because it wasn't necessary. It's not like we had an economic crisis in 2022 that threw off the whole economy the way that we've seen in past years or past decades. The increase to child poverty this time is a policy choice that we made. Republicans, and as you mentioned, one senator who's a Democrat, stood in the way of incredible progress that we had made in 2021 in getting closer to eliminating child poverty. It's a policy choice that's being made by the Republican Party. They're not pro-family. If they were pro-family, they would be supporting poor children.
And so, remind people again why they were so adamant against the child tax credit.
Well, there are a couple cynical reasons. Kids don't vote, so, you know, if you're not catering to kids. But I think that there's also a real misconception about why people are in poverty in this country. We heard a lot of fear-mongering and racism and misogyny and all kinds of awful rhetoric around when this discussion was happening last year. People were saying things like, oh, families spend their child tax credit on drugs. That was absolutely not the case. There was so much research showing that families spend their child tax credit to support their children. There were stories all day this week about, as we've seen the child poverty rate now go up, there have been discussions of what people spent their child tax credit on, and it was food and it was necessities. There was a story this morning out about a family who, for the first time, they were able to send their kids to rec league sports, and they did Little League for 1 year because they weren't as cash strapped as they had been. We know that families needed this money, and they spent it to get closer to being in the middle class and to feeling that economic stability.
Well, and right, if I recall correctly, Manchin was going, oh, I've been told if they're going to be using this for drugs. No basis, no facts, no nothing. And what's nuts to me, this dude literally comes from one of the brokest states in the country.
Absolutely. And it's such a short-sighted thing to fixate on, because we know that people spent their money in their communities. It supports a broader economic growth, right? Like if you're West Virginia, you want families who are poor to have that money to spend, to support local businesses, to, be stable. It decreases the amount of money that West Virginia had to spend on social services. There are all sorts of macroeconomic reasons to support things like the child tax credit, even if you're not persuaded by the individual circumstances of a family in poverty. Even if you set the moral case aside, programs like the child tax credit are incredibly beneficial for the community and for the economy.
All right, Lily Roberts, glad to have you on the show. We surely appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much.
This to me right here, Greg, is one of those issues where if I'm Biden Harris, I'm pounding these fools for not caring about kids.
Well, I mean, yeah, they care more about themselves. I mean, we know that Joe Manchin, as Bernie Sanders called him the other day, a corporate dem, he in cinema. Joe Manchin is more concerned about maintaining his criminal enterprise of profit skimming and political power in West Virginia. He is a creature of his backward electorate. So this millionaire who, sails up and down the Potomac in his yacht, this millionaire wants to stay in power. So I really don't blame Joe Manchin. He is a creature of his backward state, his backward electorate. He wanted to add work requirements and means testing, its allusion to drugs, of course, being a cover. He's trying to play to the cheap seats in his backward state. Jim Justice, people running against him. He doesn't look like he's going to be returned to the federal legislature. So, Democrats are making noise about perhaps restoring some corporate tax deductions in exchange for some movement on this. But ultimately, what we are facing is a situation where when you see vermin-minded politicians like Joe Manchin, what you're seeing is the result of people not fully participating in the political process. This is a desperate politician attempting to hold on to power. He doesn't give a damn about children or anybody else. He gives a damn about his own pockets and his own ability to stay in the legislature. And so we have to overwhelm them by participating, by organizing, by mobilizing. Absent that, we're going to see a lot more of this.
And this is where, Lauren, again, if I'm Biden Harris, I'm like, no. We ain't negotiating a child tax credit. No, we're not about to sit here and hook corporations up with more billions. They made a lot of money in that doggone tax break that Donald Trump gave them. No, it ain't happening. And I will dare say, if y'all want to fight, we're going to fight over children. And we're going to see who cares about the American children, Democrats or Republicans. Force them to have to deal with poor children. And this is where the White House, Biden, y'all need to stop playing around. Meet with Reverend William Barber and poor people who are affected. Bring poor people to the White House. Put them up before the cameras and say, our Republicans, look these folks in the eye who are out there working their butts off, having jobs, trying to care for their kids, and y'all would rather give tax credits to corporations and not the poor children of America.
Yeah, for some reason, both political parties do not like to talk about poverty or poor people. But when the conversation does come up, obviously, it's usually the Democrats. In fact, it's only the Democrats. And it's interesting that you bring up the president and the vice president today. They both had speeches today. And I don't think anything close to this came up. It didn't come up with the vice president. I didn't see everything that Biden said today in Maryland. But it is strange, Roland, that this is such low-hanging fruit in a world where we will send billions in our tax money overseas to various places. And yet this was something that was an obvious anti-poverty move and policy that worked, absolutely worked. When you're giving folks either $2,000 or I think the iteration last year was $3,600 per eligible child in tax credits. I mean, it actually worked. You saw the typical corporate class Republican politicians complaining about it. Because quite frankly, I think that there's just a group of politicians in there who just want people to be desperate and poor and working at some corporation for minimum wage that needs people to be desperate and poor to be working at some corporation at minimum wage. And that's just how they view the world. And anytime you get into sort of any deep policy discussion about helping poor people, specifically helping poor people, even in a country that has over 40 million poor people, it's amazing how much of a fight that is. And it's also weird, too, because even the MAGA Republicans, when Donald Trump first started campaigning in 2016, he did have an America First sort of mantra that he went over. One would think that America First meant that the priorities that are our spending of our tax money would mean a focus on people here in the United States. And in fact, it didn't mean that. And in fact, Donald Trump didn't execute any of the things that he talked about when he talked about, quote, America First. But it is really sad to see that, because this policy clearly worked. This idea of means testing that Manchin was talking about is ridiculous. And every time there's some sort of program that would disproportionately help poor people, the first thing that these Republicans bring up is either the money being stolen or some embezzlement or some sort of need to prove that the money is being spent properly. We don't do that with our Defense Department. We don't do that when it's billions and billions in farm subsidies. But when it comes to poor people, all of a sudden we want means testing. Everything has to be studied. So it's an amazing thing to watch, and it's really sad that the policy was allowed to expire.
Again, Reese, I think this is one where Democrats say, okay, y'all want to screw with poor kids? We're going to nail you on it left and right. And Lauren's right. Unfortunately, they don't want to talk about the poor. Every time you hear these campaigns, the middle class, the middle class, the middle class. The reality is this country survives because of the working poor. We know that. We saw it during COVID. Frontline workers, it was the folks working in grocery stores, people driving buses and subways, public transportation, the folk who we always ignore. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, I'm sorry, to me, this is a winner. And this is not, oh my goodness, you're champions of the poor. And then if I'm Biden and Harris, flip it on them. If I'm Biden Harris, I'm saying, I'm sorry. I thought y'all loved Jesus. I thought y'all loved God. Evangelicals, why are y'all so quiet on the child's tax credit? Use it against them and force them to be on the defense.
Yeah, on the one hand, the child tax credit expiring is a large part of a messaging failure, but also 60 million children received this child tax credit benefit. 2.3 million of those children were in poverty. So that's a lot of kids who were not in poverty, with which families were getting thousands of dollars of extra money in tax credits that didn't say shit when it expired. That is what's tripping me out. How do people with 61 million kids and the parents are getting money for those kids on a monthly basis or even at the end of the year, and don't nobody say a damn thing about Republicans? I remember when Vice President Kamala Harris was on with Charlemagne, and people could say whatever they want about her going on Charlemagne's show, and she was talking about this very issue about how the child tax credit lifted 50% of Black children out of poverty. And what went viral? Oh, why was she clapping back at Charlemagne? What were people saying in the comments? Well, I ain't got no kids. How is that benefiting me? Whenever I talk about the child tax credit. So I think, the reason why it's not as winning of a message is because people don't really give a damn about kids. If people don't have kids, they don't care. People who did have kids, apparently they didn't care that they lost the money from the child tax credit. And so until people who are actually voters hold Republicans accountable, and the fact that Republicans gained the House in 2022, despite the fact that they were hostile to millions of parents, is a testament to how people just are unserious about policy, about how people like to complain about both parties, but they don't hold the party that's actually increasing poverty and hurting American families accountable.
And that's why I'm saying that you have to walk people through specifically how it's being done. And what I'm saying is, and I'm talking about, you use their own messaging against them. You use the evangelicals. You call them out. And you say, Franklin Graham, why are you not criticizing the right? See, look, if you're going to engage in war, you got to fight. And I'm not interested in being nice with these people. I'm saying you must go after them and go for the jugular. That's what you got to do. Got to go to break. We come back. Vice President Kamala Harris starts her 7-city HBCU tour. She started at Hampton University. We'll show you what took place today. Talk about that as well. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, we're going to be talking about common sense. We think that people have it, know how to use it, but it is something that people often have to learn. The truth is, most of us are not born with it, and we need to teach common sense, embrace it, and give it to those who need it most, our kids.
So I always tell teachers to listen out to what conversations the students are having about what they're getting from social media, and then let's get ahead of it and have the appropriate conversations with them.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, here at Black Star Network.
All change is not growth. Right. But thoughtful change is real good fertilizer. And that's what has been so beneficial to us.
But you also were not afraid of the pivot.
Well, and I'm a Black woman in business. Come on, I don't care how I dress up. I don't care who I'm speaking with. I don't care what part of the world I am in. I still am a Black woman in business. Being afraid of the pivot, being fearful of change is not what got me here. Respectful of change, respectful of pivot, yeah. Fearful, no, no.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, are you working hard and yet your performance doesn't reflect your paycheck? On the next Get Wealthy, you're going to learn some savvy career moves so that all your efforts actually show up in your bank account. Joining us is the founder of a career network, and she's going to share the 3 R's of accelerating your financial growth.
Here's a tip as well. If you are an individual contributor and you desire to be a leader, do the work where you are now. Because if you do the work where you are now, when you do reach the level, you'll be prepared to stay there.
Right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
My name is Lena Charles, and I'm from Opelousas, Louisiana. Yes, that is Zydeco capital of the world.
My name is Margaret Chappelle. I'm from Dallas, Texas, representing the Urban Trivia Game.
It's me, Sherry Shepherd, and you know what you watch.
Roland Martin on Unfiltered.
Folks, Vice President Kamala Harris kicked off her Fight for Our Freedoms tour today at Hampton University, a 7-state college tour. Man, listen to this.
A lot of the young people here voted for the first time in 2020, 2022.
Hold up, stop. Hold up, stop. Come back to me. Okay, first of all, y'all, I don't want to play the soundbite yet. I just want to show you what the initial reaction was, okay? Students were absolutely excited to hear from the vice president. That also defies a lot of these people out here who keep saying stuff like, ooh, black people are not really excited about Vice President Kamala Harris. I will get to that in a second because Reese has some things to say about people with Ball Alert, The Shade Room, Hollywood Unlocked. She talked about a number of issues with Terrence J. Here is about a 7-minute portion of that conversation. We also restreamed the whole conversation, but check this out.
A lot of the young people here voted for the first time in 2020, 2022. Many of them will vote for the first time in 2024. What did they get for their vote? For those that voted, what did they get from that last election?
Well, let's start with this. One of the reasons that I'm on this tour is that I want to emphasize, based on your point, that voting is like putting in your order. You vote saying, these are the things I want from my government, I want from my country, I want from my life and my future. And what concerns me sometimes is that our young leaders will be told that their vote doesn't matter. They will be told by just the forces that, oh, they're unlikely to vote. And I know that's not true. And so part of why I have embarked on this tour is to highlight our young leaders and to be able to do what I can to share a microphone and a stage to highlight the issues that they are leading on and the issues that concern them. So when people voted in 2020, first of all, remember, it was in the height of a pandemic. How many people here voted in 2020? All right. So you voted during the height of a pandemic. You voted in a historic time where there was extraordinary loss in our country, extraordinary loss of life. Black folks in America, 1 in 4 knew someone who actually passed away because of COVID. You voted at a time where people were losing their jobs, losing a sense of normalcy. And in spite of all of that, in spite of the fact that people were literally being told to isolate themselves, you all got out and voted because you believed in yourself, the power of your voice through your vote, and the fact that you could actually have an impact. And what ended up happening in 2020, Terrence, record turnout of voters across the board, but record turnout of young voters. And it is because you voted that Joe Biden is president and I'm vice president of the United States. But that's not where it begins and ends. You voted and said, we are acutely aware that our entire lives we have been aware of the climate crisis. You have turned me on to a phrase that so many young leaders have coined, that is to talk about climate anxiety. The fear that our young leaders have about what their future will be. What will it be in terms of their ability to have children, to buy a home with these hurricanes and floods and wildfires? And you all voted saying, y'all got to deal with this. And because you did, we have been able to put $1 trillion into an investment that is about climate resilience, adaptation to the crisis, and what we need to do to invest in a clean energy economy. It's because you voted that happened. Because you voted and said, we need to deal with an issue like lead pipes. Because in too many of our communities, our babies have been drinking toxic water out of these lead pipes. Think Flint and other places around the country. And you said it's about time that needs to be dealt with. Because you voted, we are on track to remove all the lead pipes in our nation. Because you voted and said, our HBCUs are some of the greatest centers of academic excellence. We have now invested over $7 billion in our HBCUs.
Which is unprecedented.
So these are some of the many examples of what happens. And when we think about our role of leadership and what we want to do to change things for the better, one of the great tools that we have is our vote, among the many tools that we have.
And for anybody that did not vote, the Secret Service wants to have a word with you outside, so we can, I'm just joking. Make sure you
but
vote.
Seriously, well, two things, actually. The head of my Secret Service detail is a Hampton graduate.
I saw him back there. I saw him like the bodyguard. He was scoping the whole room.
But also, we do have voter registration on campus today. And in fact, you guys have a very important election coming up in Virginia. And early voting starts September 22nd, which is in 8 days. And I would urge everybody who can register to vote here to do so and to make sure that you vote, because there are a lot of big issues on the stake.
Absolutely. And, you know, all jokes aside, their vote is under attack. Yeah. There are a lot of communities across the country whose vote is under attack, but specifically young people. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I've been traveling our country and the world, but I've been traveling our country, and I will tell you, when I look at what is happening in all of the regions of our country, in different places, I believe there is an intentional, full-on attack against hard-won freedoms and rights. And I'm talking about the freedom to make decisions about your own body and the choices you will make about your future connected with that. The freedom to vote, the freedom to be and love who you love, the freedom to be free from gun violence and the fear of that, the freedom to have opportunity and know that it will be a priority to recognize where there have been historical disparities and to deal with that. The freedoms that are under attack right now in our country are very real. And Hamptonians, we have a particular responsibility to all of the founders, all of the folks who sat here generations before, to protect and defend those freedoms they fought for so hard and are now under attack. And so when I think about a moment like this, I think about it being a call to action and a moment where we recognize that we can never take anything for granted, and it will be incumbent on us to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, well, what are we going to do about it? And I know when I look at who's here, you've already made that decision. You're going to be active and you're going to lead. And that's so important. It's so important.
All right, let's talk about this with our panel. No, I'm not going to you first, Reese. No, absolutely not. I'm gonna start with Lauren. Lauren. Josh Barrow has been getting a whole lot of attention. CNN had him on today with Andrew Yang, not a single black person on the panel. and he's written this piece, and he's been joined by a bunch of other white men out there talking about how either Joe Biden should not run for re-election, and if he does run, he should be replacing Kamala Harris as the vice president. And I'm like, y'all stupid. So Barrow literally writes this piece where he says that, well, because Kamala Harris doesn't come from a place with lots of black people, she has no black political base, so therefore they won't lose much by replacing her. I said, and I tweeted at him, this is why you shouldn't listen to white political so-called experts who know nothing about black people.
Yeah, I mean, wild stuff. I don't know what they're doing. Isn't it interesting that they sort of made an argument about Joe Biden's age, which is really the thing that is the impotence of the Ignatius column in the Washington Post and the Von Driel column that happened today, and of course Josh Barrow. They made that Kamala Harris's problem. that the president is showing his age is somehow the vice president's problem. And, at the end of the day, Kamala Harris is the most analyzed vice president in American history. I mean, it is incredible to me, the level of analysis, the level of criticism for Kamala Harris. And that is because it's a hit dog hollering type argument. The reason there's analysis is that everybody sees Biden showing his age, and that we know that we have a Republican Party that is post-factual and post-truth and really, post-democracy, openly talking about dismantling democracy. And all of those things converging is what is making, for some reason, Kamala Harris the focus of everything. But obviously, Josh Barrow has no idea what he's talking about. There would be an absolute mutiny in the Democratic Party if the first black vice president of the United States, a woman, were to in some way be displaced, knowing, of course, that the number one voting bloc for the Democratic Party is black women. So I'm not sure how they're going to figure out how to get around this. I'm not sure why we're seeing 3 and 4 opinion columns, 2 in the Washington Post, which has a new op-ed group set up in there. So I'm not sure why they're suddenly focused on Kamala Harris. But that was really strange. The thing that she's doing with the HBCU tour is interesting. One criticism I would have here, unfortunately, for her and the president, is that they are not outlining to me in a most urgent way what we're dealing with here in this country at this historic moment. They have the 2 biggest bullhorns in the country, the president and the vice president. And somehow they're very reluctant to articulate in the harshest of terms how dangerous this iteration of the Republican Party is. For some reason, they won't do that. I think the tour is generally a good idea. She talked about voting rights. There's sort of a peripheral discussion that was going on there when they gave the students a chance to talk and ask some questions. They asked about guns and sea level rise. I thought it was odd that Bobby Scott was not at this event. He is probably the most prolific appropriator for HBCUs in the history of Congress. And they're up in the $8 billion. She mentioned that $8 billion has been appropriated for HBCUs. 99% of that is Congressman Bobby Scott. This is his district in Hampton, and somehow they schedule this on a day that he can't attend because he's voting in Washington. That makes no sense to me. And I would say the same for Jennifer McClellan, who's a historic figure as the first black woman congressman from Virginia. Virginia has elections this year. Early voting is coming up in Virginia in 7 days. And so I think the vice president and the president need to be talking about that. And they need to be talking on a continuous basis about how dangerous Donald Trump and his friends are. And they're not really doing that. But as far as what you just said about Josh Barrow, you're absolutely right. And this is a really crazy moment where we see a bunch of columnists come out of nowhere to go after the vice president. They mention the president, and then they're going after the vice president. So that's a really strange situation.
The thing here, Greg, which I just find to be utterly hilarious when I see all of these pieces and I see these things written. Did I miss something? Did Joe Biden ever say, if I run for president, I'm not going to seek a second term? This man has wanted to be president of the United States his entire damn life. He has wanted to be president forever. He ran 3 times before. There is no way Joe Biden was ever going to say, I'm only going to serve 1 term. I keep telling people, y'all can't get mad at Joe Biden being old, because he was old when he ran in 2020. The moment Joe Biden got elected, Joe Biden was like, oh, I'm running for a 2nd term. That's one of the reasons why a lot of people who were around Biden were the ones in the White House who were throwing darts at Kamala Harris the first 2 years of being vice president. A lot of those stories you heard dogging Kamala Harris were coming from the inside.
Of course. From
the inside. And so part of the reason, if you really want to step back and look at the breakdown of what happened here, then Senator Kamala Harris was one of the most attacked candidates. Okay? The Russian troll farms were attacking her. Okay, y'all, when you start having that much incoming fire, you then got to ask an important question. Why do they find her to be so dangerous? Because, Greg, you don't fire that much firepower at somebody if you're not scared of them.
Well, or unless you have other plans. I mean, Gavin Newsom wants to be president of the United States. Maybe not this election, but the next cycle. And, you take out the competition. Joe Biden, he's going to limp along as long as he can until, the reelection and beyond. Maybe he gets reelected for a 2nd term, maybe not. But, in this case, Kamala Harris is the hardest working vice president in any memory I can recall, certainly my living memory. And, this kind of harkens back to the last segment when you were talking about fighting. And again, anytime I hear Lauren Victoria Burke, I'm going to learn something. I mean, she just broke down the politics, the inside baseball game. You got the chattering classes, the pundits, clearly sending a flag up the flagpole to see if anybody going to salute at it. Don't think that Joe Biden isn't fully aware of what's going on and that the Democratic operatives aren't fully along. But again, as you said, if you're going to fight, you're going to have to be non-conventional, at least in the sense of that staid architecture of the Democratic Party as we have experienced it. And how many times have you talked to us, Roland, about these consultants, these folks who are on Democratic Party payroll that continue to play the non-winning message? Seems to me the Vice President of the United States is on the horns of a dilemma that she's always been on. Can you let Kamala be Kamala? In other words, can you turn her loose? The answer to that is no. The Democratic Party is a straitjacket of sorts, and I'm not saying that I would agree with the Vice President on everything, but I would say this. When she is relaxed, when she is in front of the home team audiences like she was today, you get a glimpse of how she should be deployed all the time. There are 8 1/3 million more voters in the electorate since the 2022 midterms that turned 18. Since 2022, 8 1/3 million. 4.5 million of them are white, but most of them are in the Midwest, not the South. You've got 2 million Latinos, and you've got 1.2 million Black youth. You've got 500,000 Asians and 800,000 Native Americans. Why is that important and germane to what we're talking about right now? She talked about it in passing. There's an election in Virginia. They're going to pump Glenn Youngkin's wet towel ass up to be a standard bearer for the White Nationalist Party in the coming years, if not perhaps even in the current election cycle, although he's kept the billionaire class, the donor class at bay so far. But what we see with Kamala Harris is someone who, if they just let her go out there and organize and continue to not only spread the message like she did today, but really work outside the confines of this white, working class, obsessed Democratic Party, might be able to pull out of the fire some local elections, some congressional seats, and a presidential election that will keep us from facing the reality that the white nationalists have thrown all caution to the wind and are simply engaged in primal screen politics. We're not going to do that because the Democratic Party is still centered in whiteness. And Kamala Harris is certainly a case study in what happens when a party centered in whiteness attempts to tiptoe around the elephants in the room, and the elephants in this room in this case are white nationalism and the Republican Party.
All right, I know you've been just holding your tongue, just waiting to talk, Reese. I saw one of your posts where you had a few words to say, not only to the white political pundit class, but also to the black folks who always hating on the vice president. You mentioned a couple of these black blogs. I mean, this is how crazy some of these people are. I posted a video on my Instagram of the Vice President dancing at the hip hop concert. And you had some of these Simple Simons hopping on air. Oh, this is how they trying to get the black vote. And they would just trash her left and right. And I was kind of like, you idiots do know that numerous presidents and vice presidents have hosted numerous concerts with black people, white people, Yo-Yo Ma, country artists, gospel artists. I mean, we can go down the whole line. But oh my goodness, she trying to sit here and use hip hop to get the black vote. And I'm just sitting here going, some of y'all are really just some dumb people. But I think what some of these people do is they take that and then run with it. What you're seeing here with the constant attacks on Vice President Kamala Harris really deals with folk who, again, who are sitting here who want to, as I think Greg said, want to position their candidates.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I firmly believe, I firmly believe this. I don't think Joe Biden wanted to pick Kamala Harris as his VP. Mm-hmm. I think he wanted to pick that governor in Michigan. And I remember when he told Congressman Jim Clyburn, "I'm torn between my head and my heart." Clyburn said, "Well, you need to go into a room and reconcile your head and your heart and make a decision." And I think that was the case, because here's the deal, and this ain't no lie. Joe Biden ain't president of the United States if that black woman not VP.
Period. I mean, I think this whole notion that the Democratic Party is somehow strengthened by having a white person, a two white person ticket, or in the even more absurd notion that replacing Vice President Kamala Harris with a white woman would strengthen the Democratic Party is just nothing but racist delusion and fantasy. These pundits are out of touch, and they're just engaging in like racist role playing. And I think the hoods are off, but they're really very much irrelevant. I do get enjoyment out of calling them motherfuckers and all kind of stuff. But the reality is, you haven't had a white woman win on anybody's presidential ticket. If white women were having such a moment in politics, why you don't have not one nary a white woman running for president on the Republican side? Why is it only Nikki Haley? You have white women that are senators, you have white women that are governors, but not nary one of them done jumped in the doggone Republican primary, because they know that the Republicans ain't voting for no damn woman to be president. And maybe some of them are hoping that Donald Trump or whoever will pick them to be vice president, but I'm not even convinced that's going to happen. And so all this stuff is really just them getting their rocks off. They've been trying this for years, and I said for years that she's not going to be replaced, but she's not going to be replaced for a number of reasons. Number one, you actually have to have a vice president that you trust, that you have camaraderie with, and that is an asset in your administration. And it's obvious that Joe Biden does have a good camaraderie with Kamala Harris. Now, some of the people in his team that were backbiting her, a lot of those people are now gone. But, you don't have a substantive reason. But as I pointed out yesterday, there's actually no data reason behind it. When people are asked who they think should be the vice president, people are sticking with Vice President Kamala Harris. And guess what? White women like Gretchen Whitmer ain't even registering. They're saying if it's not her, then it's Bernie, it's Pete Buttigieg. I haven't even seen Gavin Newsom at the top of that list. And so a lot of this stuff is just people just throwing darts at the water. And to your other point, I do want to say that a big part of this is because of her strength, not because of her weakness. If they really felt like Vice President Kamala Harris, and I'll talk about Republicans as well, was such a drag on the ticket, they would be mute. Because the last thing that they would want anybody to do is take the person that's supposed to be such an anchor off the ticket. And if Joe Biden was such a weak candidate, why isn't nobody else running against him aside from a damn anti-vaxxer and some voodoo or new age healer or whatever the hell Marianne Williamson claims herself to be? Because they know they can't beat Joe. And they know that he's the best option in order to beat in Trump or DeSantis. I'm not saying that because I have any personal affection for him. I'm saying that because he won. And he won along with and because of Vice President Kamala Harris. So anybody got a problem with it, just going to have to stay mad. And the last thing I just want to say is that she has actually been out there sounding the horn. She's been taking it to Ron DeSantis. She was right there in Jacksonville, within days of them actually passing that racist slavery curriculum. She was right there in, was it Tennessee with the Tennessee 3, and they booted Justin Pearson and Justin Jones out there. She really has been on the forefront. she's not as good at a soundbite, but I do believe that the cumulative impact of her presence will eventually be what outweighs the fact that she hasn't given people that soundbite, or when she does go viral, it's because of some bullshit, because all people care about is the frivolous stuff. She has the receipts, and I think that ultimately that's what's going to be a huge asset to Biden and the Democrats. Oh, one more thing, I forgot this. A lot of people talked about Vice President Harris. Wait, one more. I had to say this because a lot of these same white pundits talked about how ridiculous it was that Vice President Kamala Harris was focusing on abortion. Why is she focusing on abortion in the midterms? And that was one of the most animating reasons for Democratic voters in the midterms. And that was a big part because she was storming the country around that. And the candidates that distanced themselves from Vice President Kamala Harris, the one that didn't want to show up when she came to their town to be seen with her, those candidates lost. The ones that leaned in won. She was in Los Angeles the day before Karen Bass's runoff. Karen Bass won, despite the fact that she was outspent $100 million. So if you want to talk about the receipts, I can lay out all the numbers, facts, not feelings when it comes to Vice President Kamala Harris. And I'm done.
You done?
I'm done.
You done?
Unless I have to clap back, but I'm done for now.
Lord. All right, y'all. Oscar Jimenez, of course, seeing it. This was a video that he put on Twitter of the Hampton students trying to get into the auditorium where VP Harris was speaking. Play the video, y'all. I'm talking over it. So this is what it looked like outside there. She's going to be speaking tomorrow at North Carolina A&T. And I really hope Sherry Beasley and the white political consultants are going to be watching the reception that the VP gets at North Carolina A&T, because to Reese's point, what she just said there, Sherry Beasley, when she was running for the United States Senate, did not want to appear. So she did not appear at events with Vice President Kamala Harris because her white consultants told her not to. That was the stupidest thing in the world. And I was talking to some people in Milwaukee. Mandela Barnes did not appear at an event with President Joe Biden, and he's running as well. I just think that's the dumbest thing in the world, that you listen to these stupid consultants who go, oh, don't appear with the president who won Wisconsin. Don't appear with Vice President Kamala Harris. Sherry Beasley's campaign didn't even have Vice President Kamala Harris at a HBCU. And isn't a Beasley an AKA? Hello. That to me was dumb. That's just me. All right, y'all. Speaking of dumb, why does the black head coach at Colorado State say some crazy stuff about Deion Sanders when they gonna play Deion's Colorado Buffaloes this Saturday? Deion did not take him long to respond. We're gonna show y'all and talk about that next right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
All change is not growth.
Right.
But thoughtful change is real good fertilizer. And that's what has been so beneficial to us.
But you also were not afraid of the pivot.
Well, and I'm a black woman in business. Come on, I don't care how I dress up. I don't care who I'm speaking with. I don't care what part of the world I am in. I still am a black woman in business. Being afraid of the pivot, being fearful of change is not what got me here. Respectful of change. Respectful of pivot. Yeah. Fearful? No. No.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage. as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, Dave.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Sherry Shepard with Sammy Roman.
I'm Dr. Robin B., pharmacist and fitness coach, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered. So, we all know Deion Sanders, Colorado Buffaloes, have begun the season 2-0. Last week they played Nebraska. Nebraska head coach Matt Rule had some stuff to say about Deion Sanders. Didn't sit too well with Deion's son. They proceeded to kick the butt of Nebraska Cornhuskers. And so this week, Colorado's going to play Colorado State. Now, earlier this week, the black head football coach at Colorado State, his name is Jay Norvell. Jay talked about how great it's going to be because this is going to be the first, I think he said this is going to be the first time two black head coaches, either in the Pac-12, which I think Arizona played Stanford, and so you had David Shaw and Kevin Sumlin. But he made some kind of comment about two black head coaches competing against each other in the Pac-12, or maybe the first two black coaches from two Colorado schools. I don't know, whatever it was. And so Deion was like, you know what? Some complimentary comments. But then Norvell goes on ESPN, or he was doing some coaches show or whatever. And then he decided to start feeling himself, and he said this.
And so, we're excited. Our kids are really, we had to do a bunch of ESPN videos, and it was great. I loved it. But our kids came out of those videos really with a chip on their shoulder. They're tired of all that stuff. They really are tired of it. And I sat down with ESPN today, and I don't care if they hear it in Boulder. I told them I took my hat off and I took my glasses off, and I said, when I talk to grown-ups, I take my hat and my glasses off. That's what my mother taught me. So, they're not going to like us no matter what we say or do. It doesn't matter, okay? So let's go up there and play. And so that's just how I feel about it. Yeah. And so I don't mean to take over the show, but
it's your show.
I'm just tired of I'm tired of all that stuff. It's just, and I know everybody else is too. So let's go play. And we got a bunch of good kids. I told our team there's not.
That's what you had to say. Okay. Obviously, Deion Sanders caught wind of the video, and when he was coaching his team today, he said this.
Yes, sir. I'm minding my own business, watching some film, trying to get ready.
trying to get out here and be the best coach I could be. And I look up and I read some bull junk that Deion said about us.
Talk to us.
Once again,
talk to us.
Why would you want to talk about us when we don't talk about nobody? All we do is go out here, work our butts off, and do our job on Saturday. But when they give us ammunition, they done messed around and made it what? It was just going to be a good game.
And made this shit personal.
They done messed around and made it personal. It was going to be a great test, a battle of Colorado, but they done messed around and made it personal.
You know what happened to them last security guards? Last security guard, talk to him, Jimmy.
That's right. What Jimmy? Jimmy,
talk to him, Jimmy.
Y'all know what happened to the last
Talk to him, Jimmy.
Y'all know what happened to the last security guard.
Come on, Craig, and go down.
Y'all know what happened to the last.
You don't even know. You don't even know.
Hey, bump on me, bump.
Now, remember Norvell said, you know, my mama told me, when you talk to adults, you take your hat off, you take your shades off. Did not take Twitter and the social media long to dig up photos of Jay Norvell at post-game news conferences looking like this. That hat is another visor. So I'm just trying to understand. There we go, visor. So you ain't always removing your hat. Now, let me go back to my panel here. So here's, I think, what you're dealing with here. And actually, I'm going to start with you, Greg. When you start hearing respectability phrases, we all know that there are certain things that are said that appeals to a lot of white folks in terms of how we respond, because we all know we all know what folks say. I remember when Solid O'Brien told me there was a black exec at CNN who said that I wasn't the right kind of black, and questioned the suit, questioned my attire, the suits that I wore, and didn't like, me wearing pinstripe suits. And it's always trying to get us to change our look and how we speak to make white folks more comfortable. And so when I heard that coming from Jay Norvell, and then you throw your mama in, and basically what you're saying is, my black mama raised me right. But see, that's one of them over there from the other side of the tracks. His black mama didn't raise him right because he don't take his hat off and take his shades off. Last year, and he was, Jay Norvell coached at Nevada for 5 years, and he went 33-26. So he was only 5 games over 500. So then he got hired at Colorado State. Last year, Colorado State went 3-9. They opened the season 0-1. So that's the coaching record. That's the coaching record of Jay Norvell. Now, if I pull up right now, Greg, the coaching record of Deion Sanders, and I look at Jackson State, and then I look at Colorado. Let's see, Jackson State went 4-3, then 11-2, then 12-1, and now they're 2-0. So he's lost 6 games as a head coach, has won 29 games. Man, don't nobody care about no doggone hat and shades. They judge you based upon wins and losses. And I'm sitting there going like, Jay Norvell, come on, man, you a brother. You know better than that nonsense.
I mean, Norvell and Sanders are both black employees of historically plantation college athletics. I really don't have a dog in this fight, Roland. It may not be easy for some folk to hear, but, back in April, the UFC and WWF teamed up to merge and create a $21.4 billion sports entertainment company. I look at plantation-style college athletics the way I look at WWF wrestling. The only people who think that's real are the spectators. And I think Deion Sanders is great for historically plantation college athletics with the cowboy hats and the shades. I saw him walk an old white lady onto the field playing an HBCU song. It wasn't the band playing it, thank God. If he says, give me my theme music to the Colorado band, I hope they play Money, 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 because Here I Go was left in Jackson. But, you know, I do take note of the fact that of the 36,000 students at the University of Colorado, only about 2.5% are black. That for the first time in the history of their spring game, they charged $10 a seat, and they made $600,000 off of admissions, concessions, and swag gear. Sanders is moving a lot of product there, and he said himself last weekend that he thinks the city of Boulder made about $18 million. Deion Sanders is good for business, like WWF conflict sells. And so I really don't take any of this very seriously. Deion Sanders missed his historical moment. I think his historical moment would have been to take all that talent and all that swag and all that branding and keep it in HBCUs. Once he did that, he rejoined the historically plantation ecosystem with which he is very familiar. I wish him the best. I wish him the worst. I really don't have a dog in this fight. And when it comes to the kind of talk they're having, whether the other brother is a brother or not, is really of no consequence to them folk, because all they doing is counting money, brother. It's prime time in Boulder.
And it's you also mentioned 2%. There's also 2% at Colorado State, and that many black people there in Colorado. In Colorado, but it's always interesting because, Lauren, I've literally seen white coaches got hat. Jimbo Fisher wears a hat in the post-game news conference. And I'm sitting like Jay Norvell, come on, man, let's not even play into this little silliness. When you made a comment earlier in the week about how it's great to see two black head coaches at the two institutions in Colorado, then you come out with this silly stuff here, and then the white folks watching your show start cheering. That's right. Come on. Game recognized, game.
Yeah. Is Norvell black? I mean, he's black?
Yeah. No, he's black.
Okay.
And his dad, as a matter of fact, his dad, no, he's black. And in fact, his dad was the athletic director at Michigan State. Oh, he's black.
Okay. I know nothing about, I follow the NFL and the New York Yankees. That's pretty much it for me. I don't follow college sports until Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders has made me watch a team that I would never have dreamt in my entire life I would ever watch. Is Colorado. Okay. I mean, he basically did what Tiger Woods did for me with golf. I would have never watched golf if it wasn't for Tiger Woods. I was glued to golf after Tiger Woods. Now I'm glued to this team, this Colorado team. Because even though I agree with Dr. Carr on a lot of what he said, this moment right here where we have a very confident, very assertive, and very talented, smart black male who's not afraid to be confident and assertive in front of everybody is the reason why he's getting these dumb comments from other people in college football. They are nervous in the same way that we saw, in the historical sense with people like Jack Johnson and Muhammad Ali and Jim Brown, where when you come across this confidently and then you deliver and you're winning games, and then to add to it, his son is the quarterback, it unnerves certain people and it unnerves other black people sometimes, right? So that's what this whole moment is about. It's very foolish. It's very stupid. I hope they win. I think they have a late game on Saturday night, which I will be watching after I go over to Howard to watch Howard and Hampton. I do wish he had stayed with HBCUs, of course, but I do love seeing someone black, whether it's Beyonce or Deion Sanders, bring the gate, bring the money, bring the power. I love seeing the whole thing. And again, I don't know nothing about I don't know anything about college football other than this thing that's happening right here, which I am enjoying a great deal.
I pulled this story up. I pulled this up right here, Reese. It looks like Colorado is favored to win by about 23.5 points. I'm just saying it ain't really a good thing to sit and talk a little trash when you might get the brakes beat off of you And Deion might sit here and say, no, put up 60 or 70 on them. And I guess I think back, remember the scene from Remember the Titans when the white coach called Herman Boone, played by Denzel Washington, a monkey, and then when the game was over, Denzel shook his hand and then tossed a banana at him. I don't know about y'all, but if I'm Deion, I'm going to beat y'all by 50, 60 points. I might come to the center field, shake your hand, and toss a pair of shades at you. I'm petty like that. I'm petty like that. Reese, we know you petty, but I'm petty like that too.
Oh, first of all, I think there's no dispute on your level of petty. Okay, Roland. So we are here on that. I mean, yes, Dr. Carr, you're right about history, about significance, about HBCUs. Yes, absolutely. But we live in an entertainment society, and prime time is entertainment. He brings the drama. He brings the flair. And so, I mean, yes, you could. I mean, I'm not saying you personally, but yes, I think people have a great deal of reason to be justifiably salty about what he did, especially because he made such a big ordeal made himself a martyr of HBCUs only to bounce to Colorado. But in this instance, I'm 100% rocking with primetime because I despise respectability politics. And I feel like when people don't really have the ammo based on the substance, that's when they start to go to the little frivolous, trivial shit, like talking about how you're supposed to yes, massa, and tip your hat and take your hat off and take your shades off and show deference to the white people asking these black people questions. And so, yeah, you know, obviously, to Lauren's point, Norvell is unnerved. He's probably going to lose. And so he has to make it about who's more respectable and who's been raised right. None of that shit matter. Who's going to win at the end of the day? That's what people are going to be talking about, not somebody's sunglasses.
Hey, this is what it boils down to. So I just don't understand. Look, man, do you? Do you? I don't care if you wear a hat, you wear shades, wear a visor. I really don't care. It don't matter to me. I mean, just do you. But most importantly, get your team ready, because the reality is they judge you based upon wins and losses and nothing else. And so, bro, you might want to go ahead and get prepared for that butt whip, because I'm telling you, I think Shadour Sanders is going to be like, no, Dad, let me go ahead and throw for touchdowns with 2 minutes left in the game, and we up 40. That's how they do. And here's the other deal. Let me tell y'all right now, I don't believe in this concept of you don't let players score. I believe you run the score up. I ain't got a problem with that, because I personally believe, I don't know how you feel about this, Lauren, Reese, and Greg. I personally believe the third and the fourth stringers deserve to have a shot as well. And so I ain't got no problem if you putting up 50, 60, 70 points, because, look, that's just what happens. If you ain't good enough to play, well, guess what? They don't play. That's just me. That's just me.
I'm with you.
All right, y'all. I appreciate
I said, I'm with you, Roland. I'm with you.
Colorado just signed.
What'd you say? Go ahead, Greg.
Colorado might going to make $31.8 million off the Big 12 deal starting in 2024. I don't know why anybody thinks that they're against Deion Sanders. They want him to. The Wu-Tang Clan was out. You know how many Negroes going to be buying Colorado jerseys? We're finished. If you want to know why we're not going to win, study Deion Sanders in Colorado or not.
One of the things that I remind people, you know, to the point, and I've said this before, and folks, if y'all really pay attention to this show, one of the things that we try to do is really get people to understand history and break this whole thing down. Go back to the foreshot, understand the history and how we break this whole thing down, and that is, we have to understand institution building, and you also have to understand following the money. And so when you look at, perfect example, and I understand why we do it, but I think a lot of times we don't actually step back and ask ourselves why we do it. We talk about Jackie Robinson breaking the major league color barrier, and we hail that. We talk about how that's amazing. But I think people forget, first of all, the great players were in the major leagues. The white money was in, quote, Major League Baseball. They had better stadiums, better lighting, better uniforms, better food, better travel. But when it came to the play, it was better players in the Major League Baseball. Just Google Dizzy Dean, D-I-Z-Z-Y-D-E-A-N. He often played against Negro League baseball players in the offseason, and he said the better players were there. Now, and these were black players who sometimes played 3 and 4 games in one day. One day. Jackie Robinson leaves. Jackie Robinson was not a star in the Negro League. He was barely there. But Jackie Robinson going to the Negro League actually led to the demise of the Negro League. So we complain about why you don't have any black owners of teams. There were black owners of the Negro League.
That's right.
All I'm simply saying is, people, begin to understand when we talk about ownership. And the reality, and I get it. I totally get it. I totally understand what happens when we talk about mainstream, crossover, and things along those lines. But we also have to understand why it's important to build black institutions and understand the difference. And so I did the segment because the reason I did this segment is because Jay Norvell, a black coach, should know better playing into the respectability hands and how that's going to be received by his white patrons. And so when Jay Norvell criticizes Deion's hat and shades, he's criticizing black swagger. He's criticizing a black man who says, I'm going to come to Colorado and I'm going to have the same swagger I had at Jackson State. And that's what, so to Greg's point, when the Wu-Tang Clan shows up at Colorado, you had cats showing up down there with Jackson State. And so Deion's like, I'm going to be Deion. If anybody knows Deion history, he was like that in high school, in college. The boy went to the NFL. The boy went to the NFL draft, rolled up in a limousine, got out, ran the 40-yard dash, and went back and got in the car and left. He wasn't sitting here working out like the rest of them. He ran the fastest time ever and said, all right, I'm out. That's the whole deal. But we have to recognize, and this is why I think this story is important, why I talk about how you got to do you. When we as black people go into white spaces, they say what they want, but they actually don't want our blackness to come with it. I go back to that, Roland wasn't the right kind of black. That was a black executive who told Soledad O'Brien that I wasn't the right kind of black at CNN. So there's a certain type of Negro that they like. And so the reality is, what Deion is saying is, I'm going to do me and I'm winning. Now, granted, it's a whole bunch of people who can't wait for their first loss and their second loss and their third loss. And they can't. Lord, don't let them not go to a boat. See, they lying in wait for them to lose. See, I told you. And so what we as black people, and this is why I'm doing this segment, when a bunch of y'all watching and listening, and I say a bunch of y'all do this with Vice President Kamala Harris, but she ain't really black, she Jamaican and she Indian. Well, ain't that something? Y'all claim Harry Belafonte as black, but he got Jamaican roots. You claim Colin Powell as a brother, but he got Jamaican roots. Oh, y'all love claiming Eric Holder, but he got Barbados roots. Oh, y'all love some Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael. Greg, what's his roots?
Trinidad and Tobago, brother. Trinidad and Tobago. So So I'm just saying that as black people, we got to be real careful when we literally start using the language of the oppressors against our own in order to placate them and make them comfortable. That's why I did the segment, because it's a lot of us who do that, who then begin to change how we talk and how we act and how we walk. Don't you do that. The white folks are watching. What's wrong with you? You can't come in here and do that. What these white folks gonna say? That's exactly how a bunch of us sound when that happens. And so that's what Jay Norvell sound like
So Deion, go ahead and put up by 75 against them, and I ain't gonna be offended. All right, we got to go. Greg, Reese, Lauren, I appreciate it. Y'all take care. Thanks for joining us. Folks, we're here at the House of Hope tomorrow here at the House of Hope. McDonald's is kicking off their 6-city gospel concert tour right here in Chicago. It's an amazing lineup. It is the Inspiration Celebration Gospel Tour. You see all the names right there. They're all there. Hezekiah Walker, Anthony Brown. You got the Walls family. You got Doe. You got Mike Teasy. I mean, you got some amazing artists. Folks, it's going to be exciting. They're in Chicago Friday, at the Fox Theater in Detroit Saturday. I'm going to be at both locations. Y'all, this is a free event. You can get tickets at blackandpositivelygolden.com. blackandpositivelygolden.com. And so we're looking forward to it. So that's why we're here, and we cannot wait to share some of this with you. Please do us a favor, folks. The content that we do is stuff that you're not getting anywhere else. We appreciate McDonald's being a partner with us, help with this Roland Martin Unfiltered. But y'all, it's a lot of companies out there who don't want to sit here and support black-owned media. And so we want you to understand why giving absolutely matters. We're about $400,000 short. Actually, it's now about $370,000. A lot of y'all have given over the past month. We're about $370,000 short of our goal. And so the goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing on average $50 each. That's a year. $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. Understand, you get 2 hours of this show. You get 2 hours of Faraji Muhammad show. You get 1 hour of Deborah Owens' show. You get Reverend Dr. Jackie Hood Martin's show. You get Dee Barnes' show, Stephanie Humphrey's show. You get Dr. Greg Carr's show. You get my show, Rolling with Roland. Y'all, I got a fitness show I would love to launch. I've got a medical show I would love to launch. I've got a food show with Rock Harper I would love to launch, but the reality is the resources are needed to do those shows. And so your giving is critically important. And so if you give, 20,000 folks give, on average $50 each, that raises $1 million. That, of course, is really important for us. And so please support us in what we do. You can see your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Be sure, of course, you can also help us as well. And you can download the Black Star Network app. It's available on all platforms: Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, iPhone, Android phone, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. You can watch us on Amazon News, our 24-hour streaming channels on Amazon News. Simply go to Amazon Fire and pull up the Black Star Network. You can also tell Alexa, play news from the Black Star Network. If you look at Plex TV, you can watch our 24-hour streaming channel on Plex TV as well. Folks, next week, I got a big announcement. 2 of the platforms that they're adding our network. Man, the growth is phenomenal. And so watch us on Plex TV as well. And don't forget to get a copy of my book, White Fear: How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Available at bookstores nationwide. When you buy this book, those proceeds go right back into the show as well. Folks, thanks a bunch. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Reverend Charlie Dates. Of course, pastor of Salem Baptist Church, the House of Hope. And, of course, Reverend James Meeks, who he preceded Charlie Dates. Both of them are in Kenya as well, so I want to thank them. I'm using Reverend Dates' office here at the church, and so we appreciate all of that. Nice office, Doc. Give me the slider shot. I like this here. You got the big screen TV, got the logo in here, so I appreciate it, Reverend Dates. Thanks a bunch. Folks, that's it. I'll see y'all tomorrow right here. Roland Martin Unfiltered, live from Chicago on the Black Star Network. Holla!
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told. Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?